Family. Hello, YouTube family. Hello, everybody. Hello, hospitality family. This is your hospitality expert and coach, Zana Devine. Hi, I hope everybody is doing well. As every month, I'm always so excited to be a part of this amazing community, Catering. If you have a business, if you want to learn, come join us. We always, are so happy to receive more and more people that can share knowledge because, if we share our knowledge with each other, we can all be better and successful. And this is really what this whole thing is about in general. And so just a little quick thing about myself. I'm a service expert. I train front of the house and back of the house service staff in the world of hospitality. I also train upper mid management. And so if you run a staff and you want to find out good tricks how your staff can drive ROI, but also give fantastic customer service, client service, guest service, I am the one to call. But today, my workshop is going to be amazing because I wanted to share many, many, many things with you. Just one more thing. My workshops are all created where I would love for you to join in and ask questions and be a part of this whole amazing thing. This isn't just about me having knowledge. This is about you sharing yours. And again, only together we can accomplish many things. But that's that. So today, this idea of my workshop is going to be about calling them by name. And so what that really means in general is that when we have a hospitality establishment, such as a restaurant or hotel, a casino, a country club, or resort, private country club, whatever, we obviously want our guests to feel very warm and very welcome, right? And we also want every single guest that enters our establishment really to feel very special. But really, how do we do that, right? I mean, it's always easier said than done, but the question is really, how do I train my staff to really execute exactly that? And so this is exactly what my workshop is going to be today about. And so, one small thing is, your name literally is the first gift that you have received from whoever had the privilege of bringing you up. And so, our name is very dear to us because it's literally our first gift in life. And it's something, that we carry our legacy with, and we carry it proudly. And, sometimes, at least with me, I didn't like my first name many years because it was so unique. But now I really learned to really embrace it and love it. And so when we translate that to our staff, it's sometimes it can get very tricky, right? Because how do we really remember every single person's name that we interact with on the floor, right? It's kind of like almost impossible. But when we create an environment and when we really train our staff to actually do exactly that, then magic can really happen. And so when we enter, for instance, a restaurant as a guest, and we obviously made a reservation prior to that, and now we're standing in front of the host and we're actually wanting to be brought to our table. And the host obviously greets us, and we're saying at the beginning our name, and I have a reservation at this and this time, and this is the name for the reservation. Then obviously the first step for your host would be really to catch on to that, like the first cue in your team and your host, or even the receptionist, if we're talking about a hotel, will be really the first cue here to translate your name, your information about anything that you are about, really to the specific departments of wherever you as the guest are going to be, enjoying the amenities of either the hotel or the restaurant. And so let's go back to the original example of, you're standing right now in front of the host and you are ready to be brought to your table. And now you're sitting at your table. And so now your waiter is actually approaching your table, right? Speaking to you with your name, calling you by either your first name or your last name, whatever is appropriate in any country you live in, or however, the most hospitable way and respectful way that is to approach guests. But isn't that something so amazing? Like, how does the waiter really know my name when in reality, I've never seen this person in my life, right? And so this is exactly what the idea today is about. The workshop, that really it's so rare, but it's unforgettable when we really create such an hospitality training into art, where we really train our staff to use the very first cue that we get from a human, which is their name, and really translate that, and kind of like, share that with everybody within the team. And so, when we go further into just executing service, or like guests at check-ins, or, bartenders welcoming guests back, I know for me and my own personal world that when I'm going constantly to the same restaurant because I pick up my favorite food there, or I pick up my favorite coffee, and now that I'm being approached by my name, and the people that work there not only already know my order, but they also already know who I am, because now with every time I'm going there, every time I'm interacting with somebody within the team, sharing little things like, oh yeah, maybe I have a guinea pig, or maybe, I love to draw, or, I have hobbies such this and that. And now people are starting to remember, right? And that really is the whole art of communication, that how to know what information is really valuable to save from a guest, a client, and what information is really kind of like valuable to keep as your own personal relation with the staff that you're interacting with. And I think in general, it's not really a big thing, but it's really, communication is really huge here. And so I feel like sometimes we struggle, right? Like teams, I find teams often very struggling with that, where it's like you find yourself as a guest coming all the time to this place, but yet you've never been recognized. Not with your name, not with your order. And you might be a type of personality that always orders the same thing, or that always has his or her coffees the very same way, or always likes a specific type of cocktail. And I think that recognition factor is so imperative to really teach our staff to really remember that. And the expectation is not from our staff to remember 100 million people that they're interacting with on a daily basis, but it is if you are a full-time employee of the specific establishment and your home department is, for instance, the restaurant or the reception or the bar or the pool bar or concierge or wherever. I think it's really valuable to really understand and to also get familiar with the guests that are coming in and out all the time. And what I want to also share today with you guys is really, how can you build that rapport, right? Like, how can you really go into building a rapport like that when, for instance, your staff member has never interacted with anybody, they're just starting, they're just very brand new. How can you really teach them to actually remember important details about a guest? And one great way is whoever answers your phone in your establishment, really whoever that person might be, is really to train them to ask specific, valuable, important questions, such as name, phone, email. That's very important. That's not only important for the guests, but it's also important for us as business owners, because we get to do marketing with that type of information. We get to let them know about special events that we're having. We get to know, we can let them know about their birthdays. We can reach out on Christmas. We can reach out on birthdays. We can reach out on anniversaries, or any other information that down the line we're collecting from the specific guest, just to show them that they're actually not just a one-time transaction, but they actually matter, not only because they're in our database, but because they matter because they visit our establishment. And so those three things are really imperative to always teach anybody in your staff to really collect from the beginning. And when people say, for instance, oh, I don't want to share my email, I hear that a lot. I don't want to share my email. I don't want to have another spam. I don't want to have another anything. My suggestion is for you to teach your staff to say for that is, I completely understand, and you really don't have to share it with me if you don't feel comfortable. I completely respect that. But if you were to share your email, we will always make sure that we will recognize you on your birthday. If you already have established things in your establishment, such as, for instance, you call your guests back at our birthday and invite them for a nice cup of coffee and a dessert. I'm just saying, if that's maybe what you already do, you can train your staff to exactly teach that and say, we always would love to recognize you on your birthday. We want to invite you in for a nice tiramisu, a nice cappuccino. Come and enjoy it on us, or a nice prosecco, or a nice glass of wine, or whatever. And so that's always a great way to kind of like help your guests to kind of give their information a little bit more easier out. And it's not to trick them, obviously, because if you don't offer that, please don't say that, right? It's really just to use these lines if it really is sincerely meant and if it's true. And and so that's a great way always to collect information from a guest too. And and then once, for instance, your host or your receptionist having the guest on the phone, and now we're gathering all those informations, for instance, of like how many people are going to be in your party, what is the occasion? Oh, it's my birthday. Right away, that date could be saved in your system as this person's name, this person's email, this person's phone number, now this person's birthday. Now you have more stuff to again reach out to the guest and build more rapport. And then while you're teaching your staff to say icebreaker lines on the phone, and I know that's a whole nother workshop, but like, while you teach your staff to do icebreaker lines on the phone and get the guest or the client like comfortable to really speak to the representative that is on the phone, you can then gather so many more informations, like sometimes people are really open. Sometimes people are just really in the mood of chatting. And through all those really friendly professional chats, you can get so much more information out that fundamentally when you save all of that in your database, you get to use that not only for your good, again, for marketing and reaching out and, building rapport, but also for the guest's good. Because how amazing is that if you never knew my name and now I'm sitting at your table, I'm being recognized by your waiter with my name. And then also I'm getting a personal phone call from either your host or your manager or whoever you put in charge to just wish me actually a physical happy birthday or leave a voice message or maybe text or however you do your reach outs to your guests and clients. And so gathering information like that is exactly the purpose of the entire idea of this workshop today. And so when we sometimes that can be really tricky, and I understand that sometimes it can be really tricky to just really get out the information of somebody or like really teaching staff to be much comfortable in talking. But with that, you do many things. Number one, when you teach your staff the right way, you're building trust. You're building connection, you're building loyalty, and the experience that the guests are receiving in return, interacting with your staff, will stay with them for a very, very, very long time, which then in return can help you to get great reviews online, which really we all want, we all need. Everybody's a sucker for it, me too. And so, obviously that's really like the idea of like, how do I use somebody's name and recognize them by name? What does that do really for that human in that moment? Which is really, if you think about yourself, what does that do for you in that moment? When somebody speaks to you with your own personal name and they address you, they look you kindly in the eyes and they say your name, doesn't that do something for you? Like, doesn't that make you feel like, like it just instantly has that connection of like, okay, they address me by my name, they're kind, they're friendly, they're listening to me, they're paying attention. And now when you train it the right way, and this could also be used wonderfully for, complaints. If guests are complaining, if you have really a not so good interaction with some guests, which happens all the time, this is also a great way to signalizing verbally to the client, to the guest of like, hey, so-and-so, I understand, and I'm sorry that you feel this way, but let's together work this out. Like calling somebody by their name has I don't even know how to describe it, but it's really powerful, in my opinion. It's really, really, really powerful. And so if there are maybe any questions towards what I've just shared, I'm happy to answer. How can catering teams build systems to capture and recall guest names without it feeling forced? Well, I mean, I feel like, so first of all, thank you. It's a wonderful question. I feel like how can you capture that in your system is you do want to have a system to begin with. Like, I mean, I get like pen and paper is old school and you can start like that. If you haven't set anything up yet like that, it's very old school. And you can basically create like a folder where like you go alphabetically and really write in, physically the name and the number and the email from each guest. You can do it that way, or you can just obviously get some form of system that really tracks maybe even your calls, records even your calls for training purposes that you can then go over with your staff or your leading manager or Zana in this case. We can go over those calls and really see how the person's tone was, how they answered, what verbiage did they use. And so when we have systems set up, not only can these systems recall calls, what time and when and how long the calls were, but usually all of those systems have an extra amenity where you can now insert information of the guest, which is really almost every restaurant is really using it for reservational purposes. There's always a note section in almost every reservation purpose and everywhere, however you have your clients either open table or other booking systems, they all have the same. But really, the system setup isn't actually what's so imperative here. What really is imperative is to maintain what you're collecting in the system. That's actually more important, because if you now collect all this info from all these people that call on daily basis, but you don't really use that by actually having somebody in charge, maybe a host or maybe somebody from the reservation or reception or wherever, to actually call back these guests and not only thank them for their visit, but also ask if they can maybe be any assistance to their new upcoming booking, or if there's maybe any plans of when they're planning their next occasion, their next birthday, their next anniversary. And if you can maybe be an assistant of helping to set that up, then no matter what kind of system you have in place, if you don't maintain the info and you don't work with it as it's a real tool, you lose the momentum, you lose the info, you forget about it, because life is so fast that I'll tell you, sometimes I forget what I had for breakfast 2 days ago, let alone that I can remember 100 guests that entered my establishment, right? But and how can you really get that info without guests feeling forced? Is really transparency. This is the reason why, like I said, we offer for birthdays and anniversaries, we always love to invite you back for like a nice little dessert or a nice prosecco that we would love to invite you on. That's one way of saying it. The other way is obviously to just let the guests know, we do have a lot of great events happening. We have live music, if that's the case. Again, we have karaoke, if that's the case, or we have so many cool things happening in our establishment, and we want to just, keep you informed and updated. And so that's something. And obviously, if somebody says no, thank you, then that's respectfully needing to be respected. I mean, a phone number and a name is really needed for almost any reservation, just because we do need to call back and see. From business point of view, I can't just take 100 reservations, for a lunch and then just rely on hopefully they show up and then turn maybe other guests down because my booking system is booked. So that's why taking a phone number, taking a name is definitely imperative, just to have some form of idea of how to communicate with the guests moving forward. But I hope that answered the question. How can operators train staff to prioritize personal details like names when the teams is under pressure? Well, you know what? We all, in a sense, always have pressure, and the world of hospitality is very known to be very fast-paced. And I think the best way to train is to train that at the beginning. So I think we all can agree that when we hire somebody in our business, regardless of what that business might be, we always give them a rundown, right? There's always an onboarding process, regardless of how the onboarding goes down for different establishments. Some is a day, some is a week, some is a month, some is 3 years. I mean, it really depends. But when you bring somebody onto your team, I think how you as a business owner can prioritize this from the very beginning for them to really execute these kind of things is to really tell them at the beginning, this is really one of the first things that I need you to execute for me when you work for me. Is that something that you think you can maintain? Is that something that you can think that if I put this expectation on you, is that something that you think you can fulfill? And that's just pure transparent communication, which really goes back to my actual workshop idea here. Communication is huge here, communication is really huge. And, personal details, I feel like a name, a phone number, and an email, is it personal? Yeah, it is. But is it somehow really also kind of like common sense to give that info away when you make a reservation in a restaurant or a hotel? Yes, because you need your bill sent somewhere. So where is it going to be sent to? Most likely an email. So that's already one idea of what you can say, how to collect an email, for your purposes, for tax purposes, or for your own, invoice purposes. We always send our invoice to your email or somehow. But I think, being under pressure is a valid point here, because hospitality is very fast paced. It is very much like, okay, if you don't have a good memory and if you don't really know by nature already how to somehow multitask, it's going to be quite challenging for you to learn that at the beginning. But in my opinion, if you have a good trainer, if you have somebody really that really knows the roots of hospitality and what really to prioritize to train, it shouldn't be really that big of a problem. But I think a lot of owners, Where they run into challenges is they want to put all these rules and all these guidelines and all these ideas on the person or on their staff right away, instead of doing it in segues and in segments. You know, there's certain things, like I said, if you prioritize specific things within your business, you know, then train that first and master it. Let your staff master that first. If you have a training plan in place, which my biggest suggestion is to anybody out there, to always have a training plan set in place that you basically just copy and paste for any new employee coming and leaving your establishment. You kind of like have your routine, you know, like you start with this, you know, the concept of the restaurant and what we are about and what the spiel could be when the waiter steps to the table, or what the spiel could be when the girl at the reception greets your guests. The concept is always a great icebreaker to always just have, you know, nice, warm conversation with your guests. And then obviously go into the amenities. You know, what kind of amenities do you have if you run a hotel? Obviously, that could be prioritized in your training plan. Or if we're talking a restaurant or catering business, what is really that we're catering? What foods are we catering? Do we do kosher? Do we do vegan? Do we do vegetarian? Like, those are all product knowledge based things that you want to prioritize teaching your staff, because now when they are answering the phone, now when they are interacting with people that they're either bringing the catering, you know, the catered stuff to, or, you know, interacting with the guests on the floor, then they need to know that info. So you want to really prioritize what you're training also, you know, to take pressure away and not to put pressure on. So I think training staff in really like brackets of segments could be really helpful here. Have you ever seen a negative reaction when a guest name was misused or mispronounced? How should staff recover? So have I ever, negative in a sense? I mean, it depends what negative is for everybody. What I have personally experienced is when people say, this is not my name. My name is not pronounced like that. And they say it kind of like in a firm tone. That could be perceived as negative. I mean, that could also just be perceived as the guest really stating, I really want to be addressed correctly with my own, you know, my own birth given name, my first gift, because I take pride in that. And how staff could recover is very simple, by being authentically and sincerely apologetic, right? Because I don't think it's anybody's intention to pronounce anybody's name wrong. I know this from myself. I have a very unique name. My name is Zana. It's pronounced Zana, but it's written Z-A-N-A. And on top of the Z, you need to put a little check mark. And, you know, when I interact with different cultures from different countries, everything means in a different way, right? So when people see the Z-A-N-A, they would say Zana, right? Or Zaina. And so I had to learn to politely correct that and say, you know, just wanted to let you know, my name is pronounced Zana. And so I understand what that feels. And I also understand how it is to pronounce something the not correct way, because simply you don't know. And if staff then just really authentically says, I truly apologize. I'm just learning about this. This is such a beautiful, unique name. I've never heard it before. I'm so sorry if I'm saying it wrong. Or even train your staff that's actually my suggestion. My suggestion would be to, before your staff, when your staff sees a specific name from a guest, no matter a first name or last name, again, depending on how culturally, respectfully you address your guests, before they try to pronounce, but they already in themselves know, ooh, this is hard. Like, I've never seen it. I don't know how to say that. Hopefully I'm not saying it wrong. Just say from the beginning, I'm so sorry. Would you mind pronouncing your name for me in the correct way? Because your name is so unique. I've never seen this name before. Would you mind just pronouncing it for me so I can address you in an authentic and respectful way? That way you take right away everything away, because listen, you cannot blame anybody for being authentically truthful. If I really don't know, then I really don't know. You can't be mad at me because I've never learned it before, right? And it's the same in training in general. If somebody in your staff is uncomfortable doing something, let's say opening up a bottle of wine, and they've never done that before, and now it's the first time they're stepping to a guest at the table, it's their first premiere of opening a bottle of wine or champagne service the correct way, right? And they say to the guest, this is my very first time. I've never done this before. Can you please bear with me? I apologize if I do something wrong. I'm trying to do it the correct way. No guest in my book will ever be mad at that. In fact, they're actually going to be like, oh, that's so nice. Okay, cool. And they might even give you some tricks and tips. If that's a wine person, they'll even teach you maybe how to decant the wine, what glass to use, or maybe give you some extra knowledge. And I think really authenticity in this idea is so big, because if we're being really truthful and we're being honest, what can happen? This is my truth. I simply don't know how to pronounce your name, and I'm sorry, but would you please teach me? Right? And so I think that would be the two ways that if your staff takes it up on themselves to actually try their best, but then they're in a sense, messing up, to then right away say, I so apologize. I've never heard this name before. Thank you for teaching me how to pronounce it. But then please get it right too. You see, the key here is also paying attention and listening. Because if you now ask the guest, either way, you say it from the front, you don't know how to say it, or you're saying it wrong and then you apologize, then the second time you need to get it right. Because if you don't get it right, then it could almost turn into, I just told you. Like I just shared it with you, right? And so again, training, just training tips here. Yeah, I hope that answered the question. What role does technology like CRMA system or event platforms play in helping us remember and use names effectively? Yeah, they're big. They're really big. And it's great if we have them. But the problem is, just because I have the system and I don't use the system, it won't help me. So it's my own responsibility to either set up my system to give me on daily reminders, or it's my responsibility to go into my system to check whatever I need to be checking for that day, right? But in general, I think it's super helpful, because when you go back in your notes, like let's say you're a host and you come to work and you have all your reservations today and you go through every single reservation and you click on their name, you click on the notes, and you already get familiar before you call them to say, hi, Mr. X, hi, Mrs. X. I'm just confirming your table today at 12:30 today for lunch, or I don't know, 7:30 for dinner. We're so excited to see you. And then you use something in the notes, right? For instance, you saw in the notes last time they were here, they had this amazing bottle of wine. And then you can teach your staff to say, would you like us to prepare already bottle of X, Y, and Z when you arrive for dinner? I'm telling you, the guest is going to be blown away, because number one, who takes time really to teach your staff to do these extra mile steps? That's first. And second, how would you feel as a guest if that were to happen to you? You were somewhere, they remembered your drink because we put it in the notes, and we're very detailed with that. And now we're calling you back to then ask you or welcome you back, confirm your table reservation or your hotel room or your catering, if you already catered with us before. And we say, is that something you're still going to order again? Like let's say somebody caters, I'm just throwing stuff out there, you guys, Mediterranean food. Are you again ordering the falafel? Is the falafel something we can prepare again for you for this order? How would you feel as a guest if that were to happen to you? And these systems can be a gold mine in remembering information like that. That's why they're the robots, not us. So please use these systems. I think they're wonderful to use. It's a great, fantastic tool. And why not? As long as you don't lose that human connection touch. You know what I mean? I feel like we cannot really replace that with technology, because there's just something about some nice, kind human stepping to the table or saying nicely, warmly hello to you when you step, into a hotel and greeting you with a warm tone. Nothing can replace that. So I think when we implement these amazing tools of technology and AI, but we still have that old school touch of real hospitality, I mean, what can go wrong, right? Yeah. Oops. How can leaders model this behavior so that it becomes a cultural norm across the entire team? Well, how can they model it? By doing it. Totally, by doing it. Because listen, the expectation is not for you to be a manager just because you carry a name tag that says manager, or because you have a title in the company that says manager or CEO or floor manager or GM or whatever, if you don't execute what you're expecting of your team. That's at least how I run my business. That's at least how I run my company, where it's like, I'm not going to expect anything of anyone that works for me, collaborates with me, or interacts with me that I am not ready to execute myself, because I would feel then it'd be a double standard, right? So leaders can model this behavior by doing what they're saying, by acting what they're wanting, showing physically, being the first that executes this idea. So when you expect the staff to use, systems where you save like phone numbers and emails, or how to really speak on the phone to really have those icebreaker conversations, or how to really have that recognition factor, then you need to be the one modeling it to them first, by either actually physically being on the floor and executing it so they can see and hear you, or having one-on-one quick trainings, either with one staff or with the whole team together. But you're just expecting them and giving them sort of like a sheet, this is how it needs to be executed, and now go and do it, will not work. Because if somebody is not from the industry, if somebody never had an expectation as such, or had a guideline or a rule from a different establishment as such, then they're going to struggle at the beginning of really not knowing how simply to execute. But if you show them, because it's really like learning by doing, right? So if I show you and I take you by the hand and I show you once, twice, and then I have the expectation of you to really pay attention and to take your own notes, and then try at least the first 2-3 times by yourself. And then if you have questions, come back, we'll go over your questions, and then you're good to go, kind of thing. But if I don't do that, if I just put expectations on you, obviously the staff is going to be confused, and rightfully so, because how can you expect something of me if you don't even show me how you want me to do it? Like, demonstrate it to me. Yeah. But it's consistency too, like it's really consistency. It's, like it's really like, how do I stay consistent within my team of doing exactly that? Because if I am consistent as a manager within my team, and I constantly do what I say, and I say what I do, I boost my talent retention, right? I strengthen my leadership development. I unlock basically upselling strategies within my team that they never even knew that they had. Yes, I'm going to show you my way, but obviously you are my employee, and I hired you because I saw something extremely valuable in you. So I'm gonna give you the freedom and the respect to really do it in your own flair with these guidelines. Because if we're just writing scripts for people and we're expecting them just to say exactly what we write down to them, it doesn't sound authentic anymore, because every human is so uniquely beautiful that they are, and they should be allowed to really express who they are in their voice, in the way they are, and their, in their movements, in a sense of who they were created to be, with obviously good guidelines that obviously again mesh and align with our business model. Beyond names, what are other small details that make I can't even pronounce that word. Sorry, here's the foreigner for you. I'm not going to pronounce it, but I'm going to read it. So beyond names, I would say small details is really information in general. Like, any information can be really valuable, because it doesn't matter if the staff is interacting. Like, at this point, obviously the first person that's going to interact to your guest or your client is the face of the business, which could be either the receptionist, the concierge, the host, right? Or some manager. And so for them, it's already a great opportunity to gather other information other than names, details like having icebreaker conversations. People love to talk, people also love to share something about themselves, and if you have that icebreaker sentence, something like, Oh, have you ever dined with us before? Have you ever visited our hotel before? No, I have never. Oh, thank you so much. What's the occasion? Why are you coming today to us? What is there? Is there a special occasion that we're celebrating, or what do we have in mind? Then they're going to share, and whatever they share with that sentence, with that icebreaker sentence that comes right after, that's your time to gather little informations. They might drop little hints. Oh yeah, it's my granddaughter's birthday, it's my daughter's wedding, it's my daughter's graduation, it's my son's college degree, it's whatever. And so you gather those things, not necessarily needing to use them or wanting to use them with the intention to use them, but just for you to have that when you do make a next outreach to this guest or this client, you have something to grab on. Hey, how was the graduation from your daughter? How did the wedding from your son go? Oh, how is the dog, whatever his name could be, how is he doing? And so details like that, what people share, it's listening and communicating. Those kind of like go so well together, because if you teach your staff to really pay attention and to hear what the person is saying, you can gather so many informations already that will give you a great baseline to always have a good next outreach to the client you're trying to connect. So I hope that made sense. How do you handle situations where you've forgotten a guest's name but don't want to lose the personal connection? That's such a great question. Such a great question. When that happens, again, there's two things that you can do. One is the complete authentic way of saying, I'm so sorry, I do not remember your name, but I do remember what you're doing. I mean, say whatever you do remember if you use this line. Whatever you do remember about the guest, say that you do remember that, but you unfortunately don't remember the name, and apologize for it. It's really, you're human. It's okay. You're not a robot. You're trying to be kind. You're trying to be attentive, and you want to be respectfully attentive. And the best way to be respectfully attentive is to be authentic, But another thing that you can do when you forget the guest's name is go back into the system. Like let's say you were a waiter and you know this person's face because you served them before, but it just doesn't come to you. You can just quickly in your free little time while you're waiting to either put in another course, or you are waiting to get your drinks out, or you're waiting for your food to hit your table, go quickly to the hostess desk and ask her, hey, table so and so, what's the name again? Oh yeah, blah, I forgot. You know what I mean? So those are things that you can do too, when you really forgotten. Or latest, what you can do is you can play it nice and not say their name, which is, saying their name there's also a fine line, right? Like you don't want to address somebody telling their first name or their last name 1,000 times. You don't want to do that either, because there's a fine line of how often you really use the name within the conversation to actually make it sincere and make it impactful. And so when none of this works, what you latest can do is, if you happen to be a waiter, for instance, you can look at the credit card when you ask to bring the check, which actually reminds me, I'm going to make another workshop on that, dropping the check. But yeah, when you drop the check, when you're being asked to bring the check to the table, usually you take then the credit card, and on the credit card it says their name also. So that's kind of like your last little idea of like being able to catch their name and at least say goodbye to them in a kind way using your own name. So I hope that made sense. If you could challenge operators to implement just one new habit tomorrow to strengthen guest relationships, what would it be? If it's one, I would say teach them icebreaker lines. Icebreaker lines of really interacting with callers. Because the phone is really important here too. Like it's the phone, it's the people that enter physically our establishment. It's that one icebreaker line that you can really teach. And one thing really to say is, have you ever dined, lunched, brunched with us before? Have you ever catered with us before? Have you ever visited our hotel before? That's a question, obviously, that always gets some kind of conversation going. Obviously, if if somebody steps in front of you and you put in their name in the reservation, you then already see maybe some notes. If you are using notes in a great way and you have a great system set up, you already see. But by that time, it might be too late to just read through your notes if the person is standing in front of you. But having these small icebreaker lines really can help you to really build rapport in an authentic and kind way. And on that note, because this question fits so perfectly in, any tips like that you can actually implement very, very, very fast in your own business is my Amazon Build to Serve Train to Lead. It's available on Amazon right now. It's a very quick read, super nice guide for hotel visionaries, managers, actually anybody who's in the industry anyway. And here you can take, my promise, at least 3 tips away and implement right now in your business. Get it on Amazon. But this was it from me, you guys. I'm so grateful again to be a part of Caterling family. You know, this is wonderful what we're doing here. Thank you for joining my workshop. I'm Zana Devine. Every month, same time. I see you next month. And until then, have a good day.